Hi, Roger Hance here with Ambitious Broker. Today's episode, I think, is a very interesting one. We've got a very young lady here who is maybe the youngest person we've interviewed as part of the Icon series, but she started in 2006 and she just blew up with award after award after award, almost instantly. Family lady, 2 children, married, very productive. In fact, according to Real Trends, she's become one of the top 1.5% of all real estate agents in the United States. She's top 1% of Coldwell Banker worldwide, and without a doubt, some very interesting insight that she's about to bring to you. So sit back and enjoy our interview with Rebecca Locke, definitely an ambitious broker. Rebecca, welcome to Ambitious Broker. I'm really glad you took the time to come, and I know that people are going to find you pretty interesting. You know, I have. So, but I'd like to start off by asking you, what came before real estate for you?
Good question. So, I was a makeup artist for MAC Cosmetics, and ended up getting promoted through the ranks and became a regional manager for MAC and worked within Nordstrom, and did that for about 12 years. And that's actually kind of what gave me my business training, was MAC and Nordstrom.
Got it. Because you were interacting with the public. You got a chance to...
Yeah, interacting with the public, planning your business, making sure that you meet numbers.
Oh.
Really, Nordstrom implores you to really create your own business and to grow your business in a way that not a lot of huge companies allow you to do. And I really attribute a lot of my success to starting at Nordstrom. Because
so were you like an independent contractor within their walls?
No, but I was a brand manager. So I worked for MAC Cosmetics, and I was able to run my counter the way that I saw fit. And Nordstrom kind of employs you, or if that's the right word, kind of, encourages you to do that.
Right.
And, through that, I was able to come up with creative ideas, and we would have events, and we would, all wear the same makeup, like, every single week, and do these special events to promote our business and to promote certain colors. And it really taught you a lot.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That was collaborative.
Collaborative. Yeah.
We talked about that a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a very emotional thing. You start putting makeup on people.
Yeah.
Right?
Very.
I mean, and selling houses or dealing with people's homes, very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Any learning experience there? Did you actually say,
oh, absolutely,
you got sensitive to people? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because a lot of times, you might be dealing with a woman who is going through a divorce, and she wants a whole new look because she's going out on the dating scene for the first time.
Right.
Or you're dealing with someone who just lost somebody, and, they want to look, put together for, an event that they're having. It could be any number of things. It could be celebrities that you're dealing with, and you have to do their makeup and not be nervous, So yeah, absolutely. It definitely definitely helped.
I mean, Nordstrom's got this, they're world famous for the service thing. So did some of that stick?
That is the only thing really? That my whole business is based off of, is service.
Right.
And I always say Nordstrom taught me that. I mean, obviously, naturally, it's ingrained in me in the way I grew up. My family, are veterans, and we all served, and we're big community activists and that sort of thing. But Nordstrom really taught the basis of the business is service.
Right.
And I feel like I've carried that over into my career.
Any big takeaways? Give me one thing about service that
client is always right.
Client's always right.
Yeah. You have to convince them that they are right in their thought process, but at the same time, try to move them to where they need to go, and have it be their belief that this is the right way to go.
Boy, I never thought of that.
It's a very careful process. You have to listen to the client. You have to hear what they're saying. You've got to understand their goals. Your goals really become my goals when you're my client. But if I see that maybe we're making a decision that isn't the best move for you.
Right.
I'm going to obviously advise you and tell you what I think, but I'm also going to give you scenarios of what could happen if we go down the road that you're thinking. And usually they tend to straighten out the thought process and go with what I'm suggesting at that time. So,
yeah, I've always thought, one of the things I've always talked about is that you have to decide, what you feel is the best decision for people, because they don't have that experience. I mean, you sold hundreds of homes, maybe thousands or something. I don't even know now, but I know you do a lot of business, and at least enough business to be the top 1% of all of Coldwell Banker in the nation. That's pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
Pretty good. So you have to have an idea of where you want to go, but you need to, in my opinion, that and the way I always thought was that you need to be able to articulate what brought you to that conclusion, so that you can walk them down that same path. And theoretically, you should have more data to build your conclusion on. So, and that was kind of a takeaway from Nordstrom.
Yeah,
interesting.
Listening to what the client wants, listening to what the client needs, what's the goal, and ensuring that you understand what it is that they're wanting.
Right.
Because obviously I was being paid to make them look pretty, or, whether it was for a wedding or it was for just every day, I had to understand that. And I also had to look at the person in front of me and basically think, okay, does she really want to be that glam, or does she really want just a little bit more eyeliner?
Right.
And you have to really decipher, because people have different ways of articulating things that they want. If someone tells me, oh, we're going to get made up, I mean, that means 45 products are going on my face. Whereas if you ask, one of my good friends, we're getting made up, that might mean 5 products.
Right.
So you have to really decipher who you're talking to and make sure you understand what their goals are.
So when you're trying to tell someone that this is a disastrous look you have, I mean, how do you approach that?
No, I would never say this is a disastrous look. I would probably say, would you mind if you gave me some liberty and some grace to maybe show you what I think would look beautiful on you?
Right.
And ask for their permission and to show them. And then,
is that a similar conversation to you're asking too much for the house?
Very similar.
Okay.
Yes.
And also, because I've been lucky enough to get to attend some of your events, and you have an obvious artistic flair. So was that before the makeup thing, or did that kind of get
always.
you? It was.
So I've always been into fashion. I've always been into makeup and artistry, and always have been also an entrepreneur. So real estate is a huge passion of mine. I love walking into homes and seeing how I can transform it, almost like how I can look at a woman and say, "Oh, if you just let me get a hold of those brows,
right?
We can make a difference here." So it's the same thing with homes.
Right.
When I walk into a home, I can see just automatically what it needs in order for me to sell it at top dollar.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't expecting to do things when they're putting their home on the market. And a lot of buyers aren't expecting to like a home that I'm showing them. But when we walk in and we start talking about what we can do to the home, minimal changes that will change the entire environment and change the entire look of the home, it naturally comes to me. And I don't know if that's a gift. I don't know if that's training. I don't know what that is, but I've always had it.
One of the things that I discovered in my years is that almost everybody in real estate has a history. And so there's skills that they learn doing other things, whether their previous job or whatever, they bring those in to the business. Now they come with, say, 10 necessary skills. You already know those things, right? And for you bring them in. For others, it can be learned. Do they recognize the need to have to know that? But I've seen all these agents throughout the years who've come to my company, and I would see that, boy, they're really good at this or they're really good at that. Now, can they fill in the gaps, or are they going to stop there? Is that all they're going to do?
Sure.
Is that all they're going to grow? And so you continue to grow. What got you from behind the counter to deciding to get into real estate?
Great question. So the cosmetic world is sometimes unforgiving. If you want to move up into the ranks, I mean, family, marriage, all of that, it comes at a price. And I recognized that very early. And so when I had my son, Preston, who's now 17, he was like 3 months old. And I was scheduled to go to a training in Toronto, Canada for 2 weeks. And I just couldn't leave him. And I knew I couldn't take him to Canada either. And brand new mom, nursing, the whole thing. And I was just like, he comes first, and me being a mom will always come first.
Sure.
And so I literally, I knew my second passion was real estate. I knew I would have more flexibility in real estate. Well, I thought I would have more flexibility in real estate.
Right.
And I knew I could do it. I knew that I always had great connections with people. And I knew I could see their dreams, and I knew I could take them to that next chapter. And so I wasn't scared of letting go of my career, but having a baby and being faced with the decision of having to go to Canada and leaving him for 2 weeks, I literally just quit.
Froze.
12 years of working my way up the ladder, and that kid had me wrapped around his finger the day I gave birth to him. And literally 3 months old, looking at him and looking at where I needed to go, and I just quit. And that's what motivated me to get into real estate. And luckily, you know, my husband has an amazing career. And so he was able to, you know, sacrifice and step in and fill the gaps, so to speak, where needed. And I was able to build my career, you know, for the next several years.
So that was 2006.
Yes.
When you got in the business.
Yes.
And you went to work at a Coldwell Banker office, one of the franchise offices, and you got all your training there, basically, or a lot of your training there. Okay. So you first start, and you make the commitment, you get your license, and then you go work with Ken. I know Ken, and he's a bright guy. So did you have to count on somebody else, or did you count on the bright guy Ken for the help?
You know, there was Pat Pierce. I don't know if you remember Pat Pierce. She was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So I relied on her a lot to learn contracts and that sort of thing. But I think one thing you have to realize in this business is it's sink or swim, you know, and you can't really rely on your broker or rely on, you know, a mentor or something. You have to rely on yourself.
Right.
And you are the one that has to motivate yourself and get yourself up and going each and every day. So I know saying relying on yourself sounds cheesy. I'm not saying there's no one that I go to, because I certainly go to Ken, you know, on a regular basis.
Right.
But you really have to rely on yourself.
So after you got past the contracts, and the contracts is the easy part, right? Now you really have to start, you know, we're in the business of finding people who want to buy and sell and that don't know each other.
Right.
And so what was your day one? What did it look like?
So again, going back to my family and my family being people who serve, you know, my brother being a youth pastor, and, you know, it was very natural for me to go into volunteering. So I volunteered in things that I like. So I was the room mom, you know, I was the coach's mom, and I volunteered in each of those roles as my kids were growing up. And I did it genuinely. I didn't do it looking for business. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss, is they do things with the intention of finding a client. You can't. You got to do things with your heart and be genuine. Right. And so when I was the room mom, I was the room mom because I love these 30 kids and I want them to have the best year. And I wanted my son and my daughter to have the best year because their mommy was in class, right? And so I did it with that heart going in. And naturally from being in those roles, moms got to trust me, dads got to trust me, and building relationships through that way and through that genuine connection helped me build my business.
Right.
And then
that's your strength, isn't it? I mean, you feel your strength is that you're sincere, you connect with people, they have a sense that you are, and that's your superpower.
I think my superpower definitely is service. I love to please people. I am a people pleaser. And when someone tells me that I'm amazing and that I changed their life and they can't believe that this home is theirs and they can't believe that they got this price for their home, that's what gets my mojo flowing. So I really feed off that.
Right.
And it's not an ego thing. It's really about seeing other people happy.
Right.
I really want to be a blessing to the person that I'm servicing.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that they reach the goal that they've told me that they want to reach. Whether that's, they want to move to Beverly Hills, or they want to move in Malibu, or they want to move to the Woodlands in Santa Clarita, whatever it is. I want to make sure that we accomplish that.
Right. So you say at that point in time, here's where I plug in. They want to reach a goal, and I'm here to help people reach goals. And then you can start evolving that relationship with the people.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I can give you an example. Just yesterday, I was showing a house to a wonderful client of mine. Absolutely adore them. We sold their house in Studio City like maybe 4 months ago, and we did great on it. And the goal was for them to move into a slightly smaller home in a lesser expensive area so that she could take the funds and buy a warehouse so that she can grow her business.
Right.
And we've been looking for a home now for 3 months, and we've found a few. We've found a few that would fit, but I haven't seen that there's a look that buyers get when they walk into a home that they love. I haven't seen that yet on her. And she's like, maybe we should just write an offer on this one that we had found yesterday. And I'm looking at her and I said, this isn't what you want.
I don't feel it.
You don't want this home.
Right.
Now, could I have written the offer at $2 million and made a huge check? Sure. She would have hated me in 2 years because that's not the home for her. I know that. I knew it from the moment we walked in. It was nothing that we had talked about. But she's at that point where she's homeless, right? Well, she's really not homeless. She's in a temporary rental.
Right.
But she wants to get settled. She wants to find her home.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let her settle for a home that wasn't up to par to what we had talked about in the beginning. And we walked out of that home and she was like, I so appreciate you, Rebecca, because I would have just made a huge mistake.
Right. I think especially moving to this new commission world that we're talking about now, all the lawsuits, and I think your ability as a real estate agent today to somehow articulate that level of concern, and not only that, knowledge and instinct. After you sold as many houses as you have, you've seen that look on people's face. You know it now, and there's value in that that's sometimes hard for clients to understand.
Sure.
Your ability, I think most agents' ability moving forward from August 17th on is going to be how well you can communicate that rapidly.
Sure.
Very rapidly. I tell people, you sell credibility. You manage information. That's the nature of the job. And it sounds like you're doing a really good job at that.
Well, I think if you come from the right place and you're not thinking of your check, and you're actually thinking about your client's needs, and you're actually thinking about what they've told you they want.
Right.
And you're always putting that first, I don't think this whole commissions thing is going to be an issue for you.
Right.
However, if you're the agent that is looking for the check, and you're the agent that is trying to, get 10 sales this month or whatever it is, and your goals are put before everyone else's, you're going to have a problem. Right. For sure.
Well, so when you first started, you're saying, well, okay, now I've got to start building up, were you thinking database at that time? Or I got to start meeting people.
No, I wasn't thinking database at all.
Just got to start meeting people.
Yeah. I was thinking about meeting people, and I was thinking about how to make a difference in my community. Right. At the time, we had a cute little home in North Hills West, and unfortunately, we were burglarized, and I thought, gosh, this is terrible, and this makes me want to move, but I love my neighbors, and I love where I'm at. And so I thought, what can I do to change this? And so my husband and I held a barbecue at our house, and we started a neighborhood watch. And we met with the senior lead officers, and we literally built a little community because I didn't want to leave. I loved where I was living. I loved my house.
Right.
And I loved that my kids had friends in the neighborhood. I loved all of that. And I mean, genuinely loved my neighbors. And so I thought, how can we change? And so we built the neighborhood watch. And from that, people started trusting me and, talking to me about, their future moves. And just naturally, it came.
That is what you just described is how, if you look at the history of real estate, how much the way selling techniques evolved. And by that, I mean, you just inherently felt that you wanted to do something and get engaged, help. And you did it without the thought of it being a sales technique. And my guess is you end up selling a lot of those people's homes.
Still do.
And still do.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you sit back and you say, well, here's something that she just did instinctively. Like, again, what you brought in naturally. But then once you sit back and you look at it, you go, oh, well, I see that generated sales. Now, maybe that's a sales technique. It wasn't why you did it.
Correct.
But now you start to realize it is. And I think since then, you've evolved that, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I've definitely learned from that. Yeah, for sure. We still hold community events and, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what the ROI is on it. I don't know that I've sold a house because I've held a community event. But I can tell you the feeling of giving back to the community, seeing the kids run around and smile and in their bouncy houses and running down the slides and, having so much fun. I know I'm making an impact on those people's lives. And if they happen to not have an agent, they'll probably use me in the future. Right.
You don't need to learn great closes. You don't need to learn. You just got to be present.
Yeah. I don't know, again, when that will happen. But it's not about that. It really sincerely is coming from a place, those events, the summer event that we just had, really was coming from a place of after COVID, I felt like our community was separated and that people were afraid to get back together. And something that I love about where I live is that we were such a tight community. And, like the moms would be out on the driveway drinking wine and I'd drive by and wave. And I loved that. But after COVID, I saw less of that. And so I thought to myself, how can we get this community back together? Like how can we get people engaging again? And that's really where the summer event came from. It really didn't come from a place of, oh, how can I get more sales? It wasn't that. It came from the place of, gosh, we need to get people back engaged again and get the kids playing together again and get the moms talking again and, get the dads out there, drinking a beer or whatever it is,
Well, I've seen a lot of people, I'm sorry, I jumped on you there, but you made me think of something. And that is that I've seen a lot of people who've come in the business and they've done really well with their past worlds, whatever it was. They worked at, some hospital, as an example.
Yeah.
And they did it for 10 years. They worked around people their whole lives. And in that environment, they were just whoever they were. So you either were respected by the people around you or you weren't. But I've seen people who have left those worlds and were so respected in that world that became their farm. And to your point, it's sincere activity because obviously they weren't a salesperson at the time.
Sure.
Right. But they trusted the person. They end up liking the person and they felt like they could lean on them. The person got into real estate and bingo, it started happening for them.
I think that's a great point because when I was at Mac, and Nordstrom, I had 1,000 employees under me at one point. And thankfully, I didn't know then that I was going to be a real estate agent, but at that time, I was a very respected manager. And, a lot of the artists would come to me for advice and that sort of thing. And I was always there for them. And a lot of those artists are my clients today, and that's why my business is kind of all over Southern California because when I left Mac, I had pretty much all of the southern Los Angeles area, and even some areas out into Riverside. So you'll see, like, I've sold homes in, Riverside or Temecula. It's because it was one of my artists from Mac.
Got it.
Yeah.
So one of the things you would probably tell somebody new today is just get engaged.
Get engaged, volunteer, but be genuine about it. Don't do it looking at the potential of a possible client.
Yeah.
Service your community. Care about other people. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's so true.
It's not generic. It's real.
Yeah.
It's real. Did you ever, and so in a way, particularly your community stuff, that is in effect farming.
Yes.
In a way, but did you ever do any classical farming? You knock on doors, you meet people?
I don't knock on doors because where I live and where I farm, it's kind of frowned upon.
Right.
So I actually don't knock on doors.
Right.
We have in the past. I won't say I've never done it, but we do farm. So we have marketing that we send out on a regular basis.
Right.
And that's another thing too. We spend quite a bit of money on our farming items that.
But you had to grow into that.
I did, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For
Keller,
sure.
I did a lot of consulting with some Keller Williams offices, and one of the things that Gary Keller, who was their founder, says is he has a term called lead with revenue, and that is, you first start, you're using your knuckles, and then as you make money, spend money.
Exactly.
But don't spend money before you make money. It's kind of like manage money well. It's kind of his point.
But when you make money, you have to invest back into your business.
Yeah.
So if you get that first check, I would encourage you to, put 50 to 60% back into your business.
Yeah.
For sure. You got to pay your taxes, of course. But after that, put what you can and make it hurt. Because this business, there's nothing about it that's easy.
Right.
So, you have to reinvest.
Yeah. So, all right. So now you started in the business and you instantly started getting engaged, but that was something you would have done naturally anyway, right? I mean, you're getting engaged in the world and the community. But
if I had the time, real estate allowed me the time.
The time to do it, right?
Right. Because obviously when I first started, I wasn't that busy. And I only had a couple of clients, right? So real estate allowed me the time to get involved.
Did you communicate with all that group from Mac and did you set up some regular method of communicate with them the same way you did it?
I did. That would have been a gold mine. But no, mostly Facebook, Instagram, social media. You reconnect with people. And I used to have just one page where my personal and my business was all in one area.
Right.
I have since separated it. But yeah, people then would see, oh, she's in real estate. Rebecca, oh my gosh, we're thinking about buying a house. Can you help me?
Right.
I even just had someone from my past connect with me last night, hey, can you call me tomorrow? We're thinking about buying a home.
I hear that people pop up from high school.
Yeah. I haven't heard from her in 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. So, for me, that's like a huge plus.
Sure. And it happens regularly enough that you finally get to the point to where you go, oh, I guess this is going to keep happening.
Yeah. You still have to work at it, but
yeah.
Yeah,
you keep priming.
Right.
Yeah, you keep brushing it. Okay, so now so at what point in time, like 2006, you get in, the first year, 2006, what'd you do, a handful of transactions? Or?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but I'm sure you do, because I'm sure it was painful for everybody. The market started to crash. But thankfully, I didn't get into the industry because the market was booming.
Right.
I got into the industry because I really had a passion for real estate and homes and helping people. Right. So I walked in and nobody was selling anything in 2006, end of 2006, early 2007.
Right.
The market was literally crashing, like right before our eyes.
Yeah. So
I was really lucky in a way because I'm a very competitive person on top of all of this. And I probably would have bounced had I seen people selling 50, 60 homes in my office at that time.
It would have discouraged you?
Totally discouraged me. But because everybody was doing terrible in that moment, which sounds horrible to say, but I didn't feel so bad about myself not selling so many homes, because we were all struggling, and it kind of built a very fast community within our office too, because that hadn't happened before.
Right.
And so we were all had camaraderie and we were sharing what we were doing in that moment of time. So it was, for me, I was really blessed to actually start during that time.
Right.
I think agents have a disservice when they start when the market's booming, because it's always easy when the market's booming.
You're absolutely, you're 100% right in my opinion.
Yeah.
In fact, through my years, I always noticed that when things were really, really good, you don't have to have the same structure, the same discipline that falls in you.
Work ethic. No.
If you start with that and that becomes part of your foundation, you carry that through even the good markets, and then you really boom in the big markets. So it's, I think that's true.
Yeah.
So, and you'd mentioned a magical word, and I say this, of all the stuff that I've done through my ownership and coaching and whatever, and the people we've had on the podcast here, the one takeaway whenever anybody asks me about what's your takeaway from all this, and I said competitiveness. There's something about people bring some inherent competitiveness to the business. It just seems like people, we've had Stephanie Vitacqua on here. I don't know if there's a more competitive person. Maybe Chris Williams, who's been on the show.
Yeah.
She's just fiercely competitive.
Yeah, she's great.
And like you and like her, you don't get a sense of that. You guys internalize that evilness.
Do we?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you don't wear it. I mean, some people.
I think my husband would disagree with you.
Really?
Yeah, he sees it.
How does it come
Every
out?
night at dinner.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's.
How does it come out?
So, in other words, the competitiveness, was it, I see that person doing well, I can do well? Or I see that person doing well, I should do well? Or if they can do it, I can do it? I mean, what was the thing?
I think it is an expectation that I have of myself. I always had the number one, I mean, I keep talking about Mac, it's so funny, but I always had the number one Mac counter. I always, had the number one Nordstrom. I was always used to being in that spotlight.
Right.
So naturally, coming from, and you have to understand, the cosmetic world was very competitive. Like
yes.
When I worked for Mac, it was the number one brand. I mean, Mac girls were a thing. And so I naturally wanted to have that in real estate as well. Also, there was a sense of, at that time, I really wanted to make sure I wasn't making a wrong decision from leaving that world and coming into real estate. So I had to prove to myself that I was going to be successful without that background. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So I was really competing against myself to get back to number one, because I was number one in this world.
Right.
And so I do compete against myself. Of course, I look at other agents and I'm like, wow, she's killing it, or he's killing it, or wow, how are they doing that?
Right.
And I do look and I go, if she can do it, I can absolutely do it.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know somebody who works harder than me. And I say that as humbly as possible.
Right.
I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a real estate agent. And I can say confidently that I put in a good 16 to 17 hours of work every day.
Wow.
But it is easy for me because I'm so passionate and I enjoy it.
It's not work.
It's not work.
Right.
When I'm servicing somebody and I'm helping somebody, especially if I like you,
yeah,
it doesn't feel like
good.
work. But yes, the competitive drive is there. And when you ask me, how does it come out?
So you're a little bit addicted to thank you.
Sure. Addicted to thank you, addicted to pleasing people, addicted to being the best at what I do. Yeah.
What does it take to be the best?
A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's work ethic. I mean, it is.
What is good? In other words, to say you're the best, I get in this occasionally because I've been really upset with the Association of Realtors. I was president of the local association, director, and all that stuff. And
kind of wish you still were. Maybe things would go differently.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I thought I could have gotten anything accomplished, I would have stayed. But I got out of it because of frustration. But one of the things of frustration to me was that every year they have a Realtor of the Year award. Simple. So the question is, why do the great realtors never win that award? Really pissed me off, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I would make a big scene about it. People like you should be candidates for Realtor of the Year. Stephanie Vitaco should be candidate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris Williams should be. And these people should be candidates for that stuff. And instead, they get locked into this idea that because you dedicate more time to the association, that makes you Realtor of the Year. My argument was that makes you Volunteer of the Year.
Yeah.
Not Realtor of the Year. And if you're going to be Realtor of the Year, you have to say, what's the criteria for that? If you're going to use that Realtor of the Year term, you should say, well, they're more productive. They make clients happier. They make, what is it that makes you good? I don't think it's just how much you volunteer. I mean, it was really a sore spot with me.
Yeah.
And
I think that would be for me too.
I got in some big fights over it, you know? So for you to say I'm good, it wouldn't be just, I'm assuming it's not that I just do a lot of production.
No, not at all.
Because you got that thank you addiction.
No, it's about, I get flowers from my clients occasionally. I get notes mailed to me.
Right.
I get gifts here and there, you know. I get clients calling me and saying, we want to take you and Mike out to dinner, you know, and it's that, you know, it's the fact that I've made such a difference in these people's lives that they remember me and they remember the service that we provided and they remember the difference that we made. So they appreciate that. And again, I think, I'm trying not to sound cheesy because it comes off so cheesy, but I think when you're genuine and you care about other people, it's so rare in our world that people like lock on to you. I know I do. I know that like my team, I'm so lucky to have Lily and Bradley and my husband on my team. I'm so fortunate because they really, I don't know what the word is. They just really, they love what they do. But they also know how appreciated they are. And I've like locked on to them. Right. Because I'm like, I don't know how I would live without the two of you guys.
Well, Mike, you can't get rid of.
No,
your husband.
I can't. Yeah.
The other two who work with you.
Yeah.
You theoretically could, eject them. And you probably have ejected some people who helped you in the past.
So both my assistants have been with me for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Bradley's been with me for 2 years, and Lily's been with me for 4.
And what do you emphasize on them? What do you tell them about? We're going to be working with my clients, and here's what I expect from you. I want you to, I want them to feel this from you. What do you pound them with?
Well, really, it's example, leading by example. And honestly, when things happen that maybe weren't up to the standard that I wanted it to happen, it's vocalized. Like, no, we don't leave keys in a mailbox. You hand the keys to the client. We don't go to that level. No, we don't just pop lock boxes on doors and let agents have free will. We don't do that. That's not the type of service that we provide.
Right.
But when I interview people to join my team, I listen to what they're communicating to me. And both with Lily and Bradley, I knew that I wouldn't have to teach them that.
Right.
They were inherently people that wanted to service other people and wanted to grow and wanted to develop their own skills, right? So I knew that I had gold when I interviewed both
It had to be
of
a
them.
cultural match at that time.
Yeah.
Or you had to move them up a little bit.
Sure.
Their willingness to be trained probably had a
Sure.
little bit of that to do with it.
Sure.
So year one, 2006, 2007, 2008, you're doing what, maybe a handful of transactions?
Like 5, 6, 7.
Okay. So now you're starting to feel some momentum, and now the market starts to change a little bit. 2010 probably. So you're 4 years in the business. That's good for business.
No, I had to start all over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So did you ever get in the place where you're saying, I've got to be accountable so many contacts a day, and I have a real structured plan for all my prospecting and for follow up. I mean, did you ever enter that stage where all the coaches send you to?
I did. I remember one thing that Ken taught me was you put 6 pennies, on a desk, and every time you call one of your past clients, you take a penny off the desk. And I remember like having those types of goals. But it didn't feel genuine to me because here I am calling the client because I'm hoping that they'll refer me business, or I'm hoping that they want to make a change or a move. And so if I can give any piece of advice today, I would say engage with people naturally and genuinely, but engage often. So, I reach out to people on Facebook and social media, Instagram, for genuine reasons. Like if I see someone's kid went to prom and she looked beautiful, or he looked super handsome and it looked like they had a great time, I'm going to comment and I'm going to say, your kids have grown. They're beautiful. Congratulations. What are they doing next year? And it's not to get a client. Again, it's because I genuinely care. And that's the difference that I see in this business. I mean, Chris Williams, the agent that you're talking about, I don't know Stephanie that well, but I do know Chris a little bit. She's genuine. And she cares. And even when I talk to her agent to agent, I know she actually cares when she asks me, how are your kids? Right. And I think that's what a lot of times people miss.
I think that women have always had an advantage in this business. I'm going to get some kind of people get mad at me about being.
I think men have an advantage.
No, I think women do, because I think you guys just inherently have a level of sensitivity that most men aren't born with.
Yeah, maybe this all sounds foreign to you. I hope so. I hope so. See, that's my competitive itch. That's where it's coming out. I hope you're not sensitive.
It doesn't sound foreign to me, but it is foreign. Like I used to always say, I hate people who give great gifts because it proved that they took the time to think about the person, or they make something for you. I would always feel guilty because I would go buy some expensive gift for someone and thinking and I'm like, yeah, that was cheap. That was cheap, Roger. You could have backed up and taken a moment and said, what's their favorite color? What's their something, Now it could be just my own personal, shortcoming, but I think men in general aren't real good at it. Women, you guys are really great at it. And I think it serves what I call Roger's real estate rule number 1, which is, your income is proportionate to how many people are going to, you like you and trust you. And so the question is, are you a person who can get a lot of people to know you, like you, and trust you? And then within that category, you sell first and foremost your credibility. So how authentic, how sincere do you feel about that? You seem to be doing a really good job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that seems to be what's happening for you. So at what point in time did you go from doing, 5 or 6 transactions to getting to where you're breaking, you're number 1 in your office and you're number 1% company-wide? There was something that happened. I got a feeling that you didn't go 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, and then 7, 7. You went, and then boom.
There is a specific event that happened. So I was 9 months pregnant. I was on the bottom of the board. I went to the meeting that we had at our office, and our broker asked, and again, I'm as big as a whale. And the only thing, because when I'm pregnant, it's not pretty. I gained 95 pounds with Preston and 75 pounds with Layla.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm just allergic to pregnancy. The only type of shoes I could wear were these wedges that were flip-flops. Okay. Because my feet could not fit into a shoe.
Right.
And we had some sort of like ice-breaking exercise that we did. And this is the first time I really ever talked publicly about this. So I hope the person that did this is watching, so that they know the effect that it had. But the broker asked for all of us to pick a name and to write something that the person can improve upon in order to help their business. And do it anonymously. And I got my ticket back and I was really excited to see what they said, because I always want to please and I always want to improve and I always want to get better. And I opened it up and it said, you need to improve your appearance. And I went to my car and I bawled my eyes out. And then I thought, pucker up, buttercup. Here she comes. And literally,
my days behind the counter.
Literally, like the competitive juice I could not wait to have that baby. I had her. I got all the weight off like in 6 months. And
well, hell, you only weigh 90 pounds now. I mean, you lost the whole body.
I literally got into the best shape of my life. And I thought whoever wrote that is going to pay now because I'm going to be number one.
Do you know who wrote it?
I have no idea. And so I was number one within, I think, 2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true, so it's really interesting that you would say that. This is why I like to have these conversations because I never know where it's going to go. But to explain to someone how they become a great real estate person and say, "Well, go lose 95 pounds," isn't exactly on that.
That wasn't what I was expecting to hear.
Exactly, but what happens a lot of times, and I have found is that when people get moving with any kind of new structure. I want to get in shape. I want to lose weight. I want to stop smoking. When they get a grasp of, I need some discipline in my life. I need some structure. I need a goal that once they can set a goal in one area, that they become empowered to do so in other areas. Sounds like that's kind of what happened with you.
Yeah. And again, naturally being competitive, and having goals and always wanting to reach them absolutely helps.
Interesting. So then, consistent with what we're talking about here, then as soon as you got fired up, okay, now I'm working out, I'm going to lose my weight, then you must have started doing some other activities in a more structured way in real estate.
You're in the gym. So you're meeting people, right? You're talking to people. You're out. I was literally with my stroller in West Hills, walking around the park for like 3 hours.
Right.
Just doing laps and meeting moms and talking to moms.
Well, you're classic example of this rule I talk about. Everyone is a potential.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like that's how a lot of my business in West Hills and Woodland Hills started.
Right.
And I just made myself known. And, like other moms, it was a part of a stroller strides, I think it was called, where we went on walks and we were gone for hours and, you end up talking to one mom and it becomes a relationship, and that person knows 5 other people and, you start building those relationships.
When did you start to bring purpose into this thing? At some point in time, you had to start saying, oh, there's a lot of people out there. I need, I got social media to do to communicate. And at some point in time, I'm sure you got into some sort of a CRM system or some sort of client management. What stage was that? You're probably 8 years in the business by then?
Yeah, probably right about then.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I started having so many clients that I was like, oh yeah, I haven't spoken to this person in like 2 months. Then I was like, oh, okay, we need to get this organized and we need to have a system here where we are ensuring that we follow up with
you
people.
Bring a rhythm to your communication.
Yeah.
And you have to do that with a plan.
Sure.
You got a plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that a lot of times when people are doing it, particularly the way you were doing it, by the way, I mean, where these people are coming to you and you don't see initially, you're not, because it's sincere, you're not thinking about it as a technique. You almost think it was lucky. Did you ever feel it was lucky?
I hate that word.
But did it feel that way at first? Never.
I've never felt lucky.
She always felt like, you felt like I threw that barbecue in the backyard and the people just started liking me and I did business because of that?
No, I did not feel that way at all. I felt, I always feel that work ethic is the reason why I've been successful. There's not many people out there that would go with, my husband and I literally we didn't have any money when we lived in North Hills.
Right.
We couldn't afford the neighborhood watch signs. So we had some donations to help us.
Right.
But we sacrificed and, didn't buy whatever we wanted to buy in that moment, and we spent the money on the neighborhood watch signs,
Right.
and got them installed in our neighborhood. When we threw the barbecue, we didn't have money to feed. I think it was like 75 people that came,
Right.
but we did it. So we sacrificed.
Right.
You know, I can tell you that when I first started passing out my marketing, I did it myself. I still do it. My husband gets so mad at me. He's like, "You should not be out there," and I'm like, "No, I should be out there."
Right.
Right. But I remember falling on frozen ice, you know, because I was out there at like 6 a.m. in the morning because I had to do it before my kids went to school.
Right.
Right. And I'm falling down on the sidewalk in front of these potential sellers.
Right.
Right. So I never felt lucky. I always felt that it was hard
You're
work.
putting out.
Hard work. I do feel blessed, you know, like I feel like the Lord has really blessed me with my family and my husband, who is an incredible partner. I mean, he literally supported us for the first 8 years, you
Right.
know, and, you know, provided us a beautiful life, you know, so I could build my career. So
Right.
I definitely feel blessed in that way. But I hate that word lucky. When people say, "Oh, you're so lucky you get so many sales," or,
Yeah.
you know, "You're so lucky because of this." I hate that, because there's so much sacrifice that has gone on
Into it,
over
yeah.
the years to get to where we are. And I
I-
say we because, I mean, I'm really not giving him enough credit, but my husband really is my partner.
Right.
You don't see him, but he's my social media. He's my marketing. He's my tech guy. I mean, he's incredible.
Right.
And, you know, he doesn't get enough credit for that.
But you grew into that. You grew into like, now I'm doing 20 deals. Now I'm doing 30 deals, and now I need some help.
Yeah, but he's always been there.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's
Emotionally, if nothing else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember like in the beginning, you know, doing open houses, you know, in an area that wasn't so safe, and he would come and sit at the open houses with me, and you know, be my constant partner.
Right.
So I was really fortunate to have him.
I always called insecurity the cancer of all commissioned salespeople, particularly in real estate,
Mhm.
you know, because it wears on you when you're not sure if the next sale is going to come and when it's going to come. And developing a sense of, I have control of this. There's cause and effect. I make things happen.
Mhm.
And I find that it comes later, typically with people, where they'll do some transaction, but eventually you get to the point where you realize that when I push this button, something happens.
Mhm.
And that's where I think I've seen people flip from being insecure to feeling like power,
Sure.
empowered by it.
Sure.
And there's that moment. Do you know?
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
remember a time in your life where that happened, where you go all of a sudden like, wait a minute, this
Well,
is
it
something
happens
I'm going
every
to do.
day. I mean,
Still, you mean?
even still,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I know if I'm not going to market, I'm not going to get any business.
Right.
So, you know, if flags need to go out, you know, on Memorial Day, like 3 days before, you know, we got to get those out. And if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
Right.
Right. So there definitely is that switch where you realize you've got to put in this work in order for the fruit
Right.
to come, you know?
Well, you do some great events.
Mhm.
I mean,
Thank you.
and thank you for allowing me to attend a couple
Of
of them
course.
because they've been beautiful. You know, I know you did a year-end party, and it was like going
The
to
client appreciation.
it's like going to a wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, the
it was
people
fun.
dressed up,
Yeah.
and the last one that you just did, I had told you about this, and I thought maybe you could share it now with everybody. And that was, I was sitting next to a guy at the table, and of course, I don't know anybody there, and he was a very nice guy, and he asked me how I knew you, and we just had a little discussion about it. How about you? And he had mentioned that he had done some transactions with you, and then he wouldn't shut up. It's like, I mean, it was like 15 minutes of, this is the greatest woman that ever walked on the face of the earth. I mean, seriously, it was
Yeah.
so impressive. And I think that really, I walked away with, you know, wow, that's what everybody wants. Everybody needs to be at that place with everybody they do business with. And if they do, it becomes an endless career,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So why? What do you do that makes somebody talk like that about you?
Again, I think going back to the point that I made earlier, it's so rare for people to care.
Yeah.
And I truly do care about my clients. And I want them to pick the right home, and I want them to sell the home at the highest price and feel confident about that. And, you know, I make sure that my clients have the very best experience through a very stressful situation, right? I mean, sometimes people are having babies, sometimes it's a death, sometimes it's a divorce, and you've got to kind of, monitor those waters as carefully as possible.
Yeah, it's a finesse sport.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, I'm very thankful, to my clients, and I never forget, they didn't have to choose me. And they could have chosen, 10,000 or 55,000 other agents, depending on where we're at, right?
Right.
If we're in Santa Clarita or we're in LA, they have a world of choices.
A lot of choice.
And so I feel very fortunate that my clients chose me, and I make sure that I express that to them on a regular basis.
Right.
So, I'm not going to give out all my tips and tricks, but my clients hear from me very often, and they know that they're appreciated. And talking about the year-end appreciation party, it's very expensive to put on those types of events.
Right.
But I feel like that's the least I can do for my clients.
Right.
Is show them a great time at the end of the year.
You had
give them an amazing party.
Right. You had hundreds of people there last Saturday.
Yes, we did.
Your goal was 1,000, Mike told me.
It was.
Did we get close?
We were close. We didn't quite get there, but we were close.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And you were able to just walk around and just sort of touch and be casual with people. And obviously it was an environment that they appreciated and so forth. So you have to reach a point in your career to where you go, one, I can afford to do these things. And two, where it just makes good sense to do it. Right. I mean, because I know it's going to continue to bring me business into the future. Right. So can you remember an era where you suddenly said, I'm really good at this, and I'm going to be really good. I'm going to be one of the best. I am one of the best.
So
does that occur to you? I mean,
I don't think so. I don't think I've gotten there yet.
Yeah.
I know I'm good. I know that I get these certificates. Oh, you're the top 1% in the world for Coldwell Banker, but I still feel I'm not where I should be.
Right.
So there's still very much a level of we aren't even halfway to our goal.
Right.
I mean, there are definitely agents that produce way more than me, and
not many.
Well, there are. There are. And, again, I want to get to that level, but I don't want to sacrifice service.
Right.
And so that's huge to me. So trying to figure out, like, how do you do that? How do you sell 100 units a year without sacrificing service?
Right.
And so we're figuring that out. And I have a pretty good idea on how we're going to do it.
Right.
And I'm confident, we're going to get there. But yeah, I haven't had that conversation with myself yet because I still feel like I have a ton of work to do.
Right. Well, and I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about you too. I get a sense that even though you've reached this award-winning place and it's one of the tops, a lot of people could sit back and be satisfied with that. And the fact that you're sitting here thinking about, I want to grow. And by the way, we know some very, very, very productive agents who are probably lousy agents. I mean, admit it. Come on, admit it. In other words, they're really good at selling stuff.
Some agents do things differently than I do.
Yeah,
let's say that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I get to be the nasty one here.
And I think everybody has a place. I mean, some people want the Costco agent. And I say that meaning like they want the agent that you're just rotating doors and just in and out, in and out. There's no emotion. There's no connection. There's no, real like, oh, you're going to come to dinner at my house.
Right.
Right. I don't want to be that type of agent. I love being a boutique agent. And that's kind of what I consider myself, is someone who gives you that Nordstrom experience while you're selling your home. So I don't ever want to be that agent that is just numbers focused and units focused.
Right.
I want to be the agent that's people focused. And so if that means I can't get to my goal because I have to sacrifice this, then I just can't get there. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that I can do both. I think that I can get there and still service the people the way that I do.
Right.
So yeah, there are definitely agents that do things differently than me, and that's okay. And there is a client for that type of agent, right? Not all clients want their agent holding their hand. Not all clients want their agent, showing up with flowers.
I think not all clients understand how valuable someone with a lot of experience and a lot of caring can be.
Yeah.
I mean, I know because I've got 50,000 transactions behind me or something like that. I know the difference between how this role can affect people's lives. When people take it, do it right, it's really masterful. And that's why I hope even a podcast like this can affect people, maybe make them think about, I got to think about, being better service and just, as long as the problem sits there that you want to do more, but you don't want to give up sacrifice. There's a challenge. As long as you're thinking about that challenge, you'll get there. Obviously, you better. What role has newer technology played in the way you developed?
So technology is huge, and being in the age bracket where we are savvy to a certain extent, by having my kids be more savvy than me sometimes, right? And then the older generations, having to kind of learn, almost from scratch. I'm kind of lucky in the sense that I was born in the decade that I was, so to speak, because I kind of went through all the stages of, cell phones and Instagram and Facebook and all these things kind of appearing, on stage, so to speak. So technology is huge. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the best at it. No way. But I certainly have a good handle on it. And I'm really fortunate, again, because Mike is,
he's a tech guy.
I mean, he's a tech guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's one of the best in the country at what he does. And so he's, sometimes impatient with me, but he'll teach me, how to use
But generally
things.
speaking, you're using a CRM system and you're using it to at least 25-30% of its capacity. You're using the social networks to get stuff out there, and you use video. I know that you're using video to some degree for that. So, okay, so that has played a big role in that for you.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier about being highly productive, having 2 children, and having the children actually sort of changed your whole life direction. So what is it that you do to stay balanced? I mean, how do you think about that?
Well, we have a really strong foundation, in our family. And I think that's so important. We're faith-based, and we have a lot of family time, and we make sure to cut that time out. Also, our kids work for us. So you saw my kids at the event, they were manning the jumpies and the slides, so it really is a family business. My husband has his own career, but he's definitely very much involved. So, I mean, on a daily basis, we're constantly together. And part of the reason why I don't work in the office is because I want to be working in my home. So I'm there when my kids come home.
So you don't physically go in the office often?
No, I don't. Not very often. I mean,
always been like that, or was that COVID generated?
It was COVID generated and kid generated, So I wanted to be with them. I wanted to be there when they got home. I wanted to be able to make their snacks, and so I think that keeps us balanced, and it's hard because the home is also an office, and I can't tell you how many people have the codes to my garage and just come in my home all the time, walking in and out. And so that's hard because we don't have really like a sacred place, so to speak. So that may change in the future. But right now, well, my kids, I want to say they're little, but they're not. They're 17 and 14 now. But we made that a point because we wanted to be home for them. I take my daughter to school every day. I don't care what listing appointment I'm supposed to have or what meeting I'm supposed to attend. I want to take my daughter to school because I want to make sure that I have that time with her. We're together at night. I mean, now they're teenagers, so they want to be in their rooms and on their games, and we are dedicated.
You put a big premium, it seems, on time and managing time. I mean, you got to be very efficient with time, it seems
Yes,
like.
which means I have to work very late at night and I have to get up very early in the morning.
Got it.
And then we also have our, which I think is really important. We have our family vacations, which really is just time for us.
Right.
And so we try to get away a couple of times a year and really just spend time with our family.
Can you do that without being going anxiety crazy?
It's hard. It's really hard. I will say that. And I have lost a couple deals because I've been on vacation, which has been terrible.
Yeah.
And you beat yourself up over it, but you get over it.
Yeah. I always wonder why it is that I have an appointment in 3 or 4 weeks to get my hair cut.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to wait for this lady, or my dentist or my doctor. It's like, don't they want to wait for me? It's like my clients want to wait for me that 1 week, It always seemed to be that way. Just a few seconds on marketing listings. And I don't want you to give away all your tips and trades. But when you walk into a house, you start thinking about, well, let's start with this. Do you have a fixed listing presentation?
I do.
You do. So it's not canned, but it's structured.
Yes.
Okay, that's a way to put it. And you want to make certain points.
Yes.
In that presentation.
Yes.
And so what do you want them to know about you?
I want them to know that they are going to have extraordinary service from me. It's going to be like it's not going to be like any other agent that's sitting in front of them.
Right.
We're going to have an experience that is going to be it's going to be lucrative, right? Because they're going to sell at the highest dollar.
Right.
But it's also going to be stress-free because they have an agent that's sitting in front of them that cares.
Right.
And they have an agent that's sitting in front of them that's also very competitive, that I want to break records in the neighborhood. I want to make sure that we're the highest sale on this street or in this tract, right? So when I sit in front of clients, there are definitely points that I make that go along with what I just mentioned.
Right.
And
so you're not just saying these things because words are cheap. You then say, this is what I'm going to do, and here are the things I'm going to do that support the statement I just made.
Yeah, and this is what I have done.
This is what I have done.
Look at this price per square foot.
Right.
And this is why, without giving too much away, the RL Estates way works, right? And, I'm very big on ensuring that every home is presented in the best way possible.
Right.
And a lot of the listing presentation is talking about, what I see, what we can do here.
Right.
To get you an extra 10 or 20,000.
You say we want to make this home. We want to make this home more appealing. More appealing means more money to you, and that's a little science to that. Love it. Okay. So give me some advice for someone. No, let's do this. Your younger sister's getting into real estate right now. And what are you going to tell her to expect and what to do and what not to do, who to listen to, who not to listen to? Not in that order.
Sure. So first and foremost, I think anybody who's coming into real estate needs to know that it's a very stressful and a very demanding job. And that once you get to a certain level, there really are no days off. It really is 24/7.
Right.
I mentioned earlier that I thought real estate would give me more flexibility.
Right.
I think it does in some ways.
Right.
But you're always on call. There's always some sort of issue that you have to resolve, right? Or some urgent need, whether a house floods or, someone drives their car through the garage door.
Right.
There's always something that's happening.
Right.
And so you have to be on call and you can't seem bothered when those calls come in. So I think, number one, I would want to make sure my younger sister or my daughter or my son, who are both thinking, this might be the way to go,
right,
that they understand, like, look at how much we sacrifice
right,
in order to have this career, first and foremost. And what I would tell them to do is to give back, to volunteer, to get involved in your community.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that you care about, whether it's baseball or knitting or cooking or whatever it is, make that a part of your business.
Right.
So you can at least enjoy the work, right, that comes with it. Like if I was a cook, oh my gosh, I would probably be doing 10 times more business than what I'm doing right now because I would be on Instagram and TikTok making cooking videos and being like, hey, by the way, if you want a kitchen like this, call me. We can make that happen for you.
Right.
You know, I mean, find something that you love and use it to help you in your business.
Right.
Because then you're kind of blending this perfect world for yourself. You know, and for me, it's fashion and interior design and artistry and also just the pure blessing I get from giving back to people. So for me, real estate is a perfect world because I'm able to exercise all of that in my career. And that's why it's easy for me to work 16-hour days.
I think you have to find a way, you know, I could go back and I wouldn't bore you with the stuff in my career, but I can tell you I've done very specific things in my life because I said, I need to find a way to like this. This is really paying off for me. It'd be horrible if I didn't like it. So, because then I would be making money not liking it. So I have to find a way to find joy in the things that actually pays off pretty good.
Sure. I'm sure pickleball brings you business. Some way, shape, or form.
I don't know. But it certainly gets you talking to people. It's for sure and get you engaged with people. Well, listen, I appreciate the time. You've given me a lot of time. I don't know if you've got, or you can find a story, but I've also found that everyone's got one really weird story, one really weird client, one really unusual thing, whether it be, you know, I had a client one time that turns out they had buried maybe 80 animals in their yard, and the buyers found out about it. I've heard stories about, you know, people, agents who had get a call from a client and there'd been a murder in their house or some weird stuff that happens. Can you think of anything offhand that you go, oh my goodness? I should have prepped you for that. I shouldn't have just pulled that.
So a couple things come to mind. One is the homeowner who has since unfortunately passed away, met a ghost in the house that I sold her, and became friends with the ghost and told me all about the ghost. And
this is the story I wanted right here.
And they were friends. They were best friends. And she would rock in a rocking chair, the ghost.
Really?
I never saw it. I don't believe in ghosts.
Right.
But yeah, the client told me all about it. And she was so thankful that I sold her this house because I sold her the house that gave her her best friend, which was a ghost.
Wow.
So that was very weird.
Yeah, that's unusual.
Another story I tell a lot to people who are thinking about getting into real estate is I had a client call me or a potential client call me and leave me a voicemail. And the voicemail was just off. And I was like, oh, that was weird, right? Like, I don't know if I want to call that person back.
Right.
You know, sounded like a very deep voice and like, what's that person calling me? Why is he calling me out of the blue?
Yeah.
But I called him back.
A sense of something not right here?
Well, just the sense of, I don't know about this. Is this real or not? So I called him back and he's like, yeah, I want to buy a house. Can you show me some houses? And I was like, sure, I can show you some houses. And so I actually had Preston with me, which, you know, I think that's interesting that some moms feel like they can't take their kids with them as real estate agents. I took my kids with me on listing appointments. So I had Preston with me. He was holding my hand and we were showing this man houses. And, you know, I never thought to Google him and I never thought to like really ask him who he was. We were looking at $400,000 houses at the time, which today would be like $800,000 homes.
Right.
Okay. So we're looking at $400,000 homes and he's like, yeah, I'm not from here. You know, I thought $400,000 would go a long way. You know, I want a house up there. And I was like, oh, well, if you want that,
that's $1 million.
We need to up your budget. And he was like, okay, well, call this person and tell him I need more money. And I was like, who's that person? Right. And he's like, oh, he's my money manager. And I was like, okay. So I called the person and eventually I ended up selling him Lucy Lou's house. And I still never Googled him. I knew his name, obviously, but I didn't know who he was.
Right.
And then one day I was watching, when the ball drops for New Year's Eve.
Sure.
In New York, my client was on stage.
Oh, is that right?
And that was the first time I ever realized
an artist
that my client was the #1 songwriter, singer in the world at that moment.
Wow.
And I was like, holy cow. Like,
how did I not know that?
How did I not know that?
Right.
Like, how dumb can I
So
be?
they went from 400 to, what was the, what'd you tell them?
So I sold it, I think it was like 1.2 or 1.3
Wow.
at the
Tripled.
time. Yeah. And
Triple.
a beautiful house, still one of my favorite homes
Really?
ever. Like, Lucy Liu had an incredible design.
Right.
But just the house was just stunning. I loved it.
Yeah.
And when we sold it, I cried because I knew I probably wasn't going to encounter that house again. But to this day, he's one of my close friends. His wife is one of my closest friends. I've probably sold them, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 houses. I don't know. Again, like it's just cool to know that I almost didn't even return the call because I just didn't know where he came from.
Yeah.
I didn't know how he found me. I was like,
you never know.
Yeah. Like,
never judge the book by the cover.
Right. And I had my son and I was like, do I really want to take my son out today and go show somebody I don't even know houses?
Right.
But I just did it. I went and he really is like my top client today and just an incredible human. And and she, like I said, is one of my closest friends. And
one of the great benefits of this business, isn't it? That you meet these people from so many different walks of life and then they become your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. I can say the same thing. It's been the treasure probably of my life is all the people I've had a chance to meet and get to know and that become part of your life, and that you talk to for 30 years, and so forth.
For sure.
Okay, I've taken up your time and I really appreciate it. You're a wonderful person. I know you're going to do great, and I'm proud of you because I think you represent what I think real estate should be.
Well, thank you.
I do. I say it very sincerely. We've got to keep this industry professional, and you're kind of a symbol of that. So thank you.
Thank you. That means the world.
And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.